Stocks, bonds, ETFs, straight out of downtown Chicago. This is Zach's Market Edge.
Welcome to Zach's Market Edge, the podcast about investing in your life. I'm your host, Tracy Reinick, and this week I'm joined by Zach's product manager, Harry Kugias. Did I say that right?
That's correct.
Okay, excellent. I should know it by now because this is the fourth time, I think, you've joined us. 4 times, and Harry was on the very first Market Edge podcast about 4 years ago in 2016, where we discussed the same topic of Greece, what was going on over there. Back then it was like the crisis and would they ever come out of it? It was kind of depressing on the podcast. If you go back and listen to them, I think like the first 2 years we were rather depressed. It was basically like the end is near. It was not good. But Harry is from Greece and goes over there every year and spends quite a bit of time. And so he just got back. So I always like to have him on when he's back here in the States to give us like basically the play-by-play of what's going on. But it is interesting now to see the evolution of all the times I've had you on the show. And it's kind of tracking what's going on with the Greek economy and all of that, because things have improved dramatically since that first show. We were talking about the brain drain, the doom. And now I don't even see any articles about the brain drain. All I see are articles about Athens. It's super hot. Everybody wants to move there. The neighborhoods are being transformed. A lot of restaurants and shops that were boarded up are now springing back to life. That's all good. Is that the real story?
Well, it's part of the story.
Okay.
The brain drain is still
is
quite
happening.
active.
Okay.
Yeah, it is, and it's not good for the future of Greece.
Right.
Because all the educated people obviously are the ones that are leaving,
Right.
and the technicians, believe it or not.
Okay.
The plumbers and HVAC folks are venturing into Germany and France and so forth.
That's not good.
Well, it's not good because if you need anything done,
right,
you
that's
gotta
like the
wait
building blocks.
Yeah, exactly.
Especially with the older buildings, I feel like people are probably pretty much like craftsmen on how to handle all that stuff.
Right, and you mentioned what's happening in the neighborhoods, particularly since Greece allowed private citizens to basically have B&Bs.
Okay.
But
that was one of my questions when I was preparing for this podcast, which I don't believe we've talked about in the past, is what's going on even with Airbnbs and whether or not they're seeing a backlash there that is happened or is still happening in many other cities where a lot of outsiders are coming in, buying up apartments, and then leasing them out. And that's taking a lot of market rate properties off the market, pushing up rents. Is that happening there?
It is happening there. I don't know if it's pushing up rents, but it certainly is. Certainly, there's a lot of real estate, obviously, that still needs to be, basically lent out.
Yeah.
But it is there are a lot of foreigners come in and buy them for next to nothing.
Right.
Entire building for 10,000, 15,000 euros a unit.
Wow. So wait a minute, time out. Have you thought when you were just back over there, have you been I want to become a landlord? I should be buying all this. Have you been thinking about it?
No,
I
have not. I know what it is to get
to
stuff
actually
done
be
there.
that. Okay.
I mean, the construction is different, obviously, than here.
Yeah.
So it's a lot more involved because you don't have wood. You have pretty much concrete to
yes,
deal with. So
can't even imagine.
But it is it has picked up the economy. The tourist economy, particularly in Athens, has really increased, right?
Yes.
Because of the B&Bs, there was a shortage of really hotels.
Yeah.
So and a lot of Orientals have really started coming, particularly the Chinese.
Okay.
So and a lot of the investment is from the Chinese, and maybe we'll get to Costco.
I was reading all about that. We can get to it right now, I guess.
Yeah.
So What is the Costco thing? That's the huge port, right?
That's correct. It's the Piraeus port, and it is quite large.
I
And
read it's the seventh largest in Europe.
right, and China wants to make it the largest,
Yeah.
or one of the top 5 largest in. Well, they claim the largest in Europe for containers.
Now, did they buy it?
No, they have a stake in it,
Okay.
and I believe by 2021 is going to be. Right now, I think they want to. The initial one is a little bit over 50%,
Okay.
but they want to increase it to maybe 67, 75, or whatever percentage. I don't know the exact details, but it's a significant investment.
Yeah.
It's between $1 and $2 billion.
Okay.
So it adds a lot to the economy.
Yeah. I was reading about that, and then kind of tied in with that is this golden visa
Right.
thing, and that started only maybe 2 years ago or so. Is that right? Maybe even 2018.
I'm not sure about the time, but it
Okay,
really
it's not-
hasn't been talked about very much
No.
until recently. I think Mitsotakis basically is the one that is promoting it.
Okay.
And the buzz from the ordinary Greeks is, says, why are we giving it away? But it is supposed to bring in investment, but rich people hold on to their money. So how much of that investment is going to come to Greece? I'm not sure.
I don't know, but this is what it is. So you can get a renewable 5-year residence permit to go live in Greece in exchange for 250,000 euro investment in real estate. And right now, I did the exchange before we did the podcast, and in US dollars, that would be 275,000 US dollars gets you the 5-year residence permit, which does give you ability to be all over the Eurozone then with that permit, like at least to go
Correct.
visit and all of that. And I saw some stats that said, and this was from the Bank of Greece, they said in 2018, the program brought in $516 million in Chinese capital alone. And then this year, in only the first half of 2019, it's 488 million. So that seems to indicate that it is doing what it was supposed to do, at least having people come in and buy up the real estate. But then I also saw in some of the articles, people just coming in, buying up 3 apartments, putting them on Airbnb, and then like jetting back home to
Yeah.
Shanghai or wherever.
Right.
So that is investment in Athens, but it's kind of a mixed investment, it seems.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it is bringing in investment, right?
Yes.
Which is very important for
Yeah,
the Greek
almost
economy.
over $1 billion.
And there are other benefits, inheritance. I mean, if they want to go the extent of the law, I mean, they can get a lot of benefits for very little investment.
Okay.
And that's what some of the Greeks are saying. Hey, wait a minute, we're just selling our country, for next to nothing. So,
Well, it is a pretty good deal because Portugal had that golden
Right.
visa plan as well, started even longer ago, like pretty many years. They've been doing it now. And that's at 500,000 euros in order for me to get in there.
Right.
So it is 50% off what you can get for
yes.
compared to Portugal, I guess, if you look at it that way. So yeah, it seems pretty cheap.
Yeah, it is. I mean, for the people that can take advantage of it, it's
Yeah.
a good deal.
Now, is it mostly the Chinese who are taking advantage, or are some Americans over there, or who else does it?
Yeah,
Can you even tell?
No. I mean,
Okay.
It's I don't know if
Such
they
a
give those
big area.
statistics out.
Yeah.
It is large, but there are a lot of Middle Easterns that are taking advantage of it.
I remember in past podcasts we talked about the Russian investment that was going on in
That too.
property.
Yes.
Has that slowed?
No, I don't know if it's not as let's say large as or apparent as it once was.
Okay, because I
But-
remember you really talking about it a couple of years ago.
Right, but it has brought a lot more tourism from
Okay.
from Russia and also Eastern Europe, whereas they're like the second language after Greek is Russian in a lot of
Wow.
tourist areas.
Okay,
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah, they close off entire restaurants, entire hotels that will only cater to the Russians.
Interesting. Okay. But speaking of tourism, as you mentioned earlier, that's like on a big boom still. Every year on the podcast, we have talked about how tourism is held up, even in the dark times a couple of years ago.
Absolutely,
It was still tourism was still killing it. And then this year, it seems even more impressive that the tourism is expected to be another record again. I saw from, I think this was from the Bank of Greece too, that they're expecting it to exceed 17 billion euros this year. And that's pretty impressive, they think, because you have both Brexit, which is causing issues. You have the slower German economy, get a lot of German tourists in there. And then the collapse of Thomas Cook. That
Right.
was a big British tour operator, basically, who I know from looking at Greek vacations, goes to like Rhodes and Santorini and all of these places. And so when they collapsed, that put a damper, but yet even still, they're still going to have the record.
Right.
But do you see that trickling through the economy more with, every year seemingly a record?
Yeah, there is. I mean, if you go into Athens and certainly the islands, you notice it a lot. In Corinth, where I'm at, and in Glyfada, where I'm at, you don't see a lot of it. But Glyfada has its own type of investment now, which is the Ellinikon, which is going to be around $8 billion.
Okay.
And the government approved it.
What is that?
That's Ellinikon is the old Greek airport.
Oh.
In Athens.
Okay.
It's around 1,500 acres, which is quite large.
Yeah.
They plan to allocate around 500 acres to a park.
Oh.
And the rest will be like a mega casino, a big port.
Wow.
They're estimating between 70 and 80,000 additional jobs to be generated.
Yeah, that's huge.
Which is, it's a huge investment for Greece, $8 billion.
Yeah.
So a lot more than, China is buying for the port.
Yeah. Okay. That's something to watch that we'll have to see
Absolutely, yeah.
going into the future. I did notice, just talking about the economy once again, in 2018, the Greek GDP was actually up 1.9%. And last year, that was faster than both Germany and France. It was coming off of fairly low levels,
Yes.
but still, that was really, really positive. And then I saw especially the GDP actually collapsed 25% back in 2009. So this is a nice turnaround that we're seeing. And then they're expecting just over 2% this year, which again,
That's
compared to the Eurozone, the rest of the Eurozone is quite strong. And then I just saw some predictions for 2020, and these are just predictions, of course, but I was seeing 2.8 possibly for 2020.
Yeah, by 2024, I think they're projecting 3.5.
Okay.
Which is good. But you have to put that into context. I mean,
Well,
Greece
been
still
so
has
bad.
60 or 70 billion dollars in debt, right? It's 180% of the GDP.
I know.
And that's not set to come down for decades. So
True, except I did see a tidbit that they're expected to pay off their IMF loans early, which is a positive.
Right. It's a very small amount, though.
I know, but still, that's like going in the right direction.
Right. Oh,
it
absolutely.
seems.
Yeah.
Where do things stand with like the pensions and that stuff that was going on a couple of years ago where they had to do austerity? Lots of the pensions got cut. It was very difficult for many people on the fixed income to
It still
survive.
is.
Okay.
Yeah, it still is. I mean, you see, they're equating it to pretty much like the Depression,
Yeah.
A lot of older Greeks and a lot of young families just can't make do.
Yeah.
Like in most of Europe, I mean, it was a male that kind of brought in the income. Well, that's no longer the case. I mean, both husband and wife have to work.
Yeah.
It's a necessity. And you can see that they're doing with a lot less. Not that that's necessarily a bad thing, but you see that it's taken its toll. Not a lot of sort of local tourism takes place, particularly where we are. I mean, things are quite empty
Okay.
as far as the hotels from locals, basically,
Right.
and restaurants and so forth. The tourists coming from other parts of the country, right?
Right.
The Greeks that live in the area I mean, they have accepted it. They have modified their spending, so
Right.
it is a little bit better. I can't say that
Okay.
it's back to what it was back in the '90s or even the '80s, but it's certainly getting to the point where people are starting to see that maybe there is a light at the end of the tunnel.
Okay. Well,
So
that's positive for sure.
yeah,
Took a look at the Greek ETF because we talk about it every time on this show, and it really is the only pure way to play Greece that's still out there. It's still in business, it's still hanging in there. And this year, the Greek ETF is basically killing it. So it's been a good story for those who have been kind of hanging out in it or checking it out. So it's Global X Greece ETF, and it was came into being in December 2011. But this year to date, it is up 44.2% and is one of the best performers in all of Europe. Even the Greek overall stock market, which it tracks pretty closely, is up 47.3% since the beginning of the year. And that is its biggest 1 year gain if this holds. We still have a little bit of time left in the year, but its biggest 1 year gain since the dot-com boom of 1999 when everything was soaring, even in Europe. And so that's good news. But I did take a look at the 2 year return for the Greek ETF, which is ticker GREK, for those of you wondering out there. 2 year, it's up, but just barely 4.9% because 2018 it did not perform quite as well. But if you had stuck it out or dollar cost average, it hasn't been too bad. The yield is almost 2.1%. So you get a nice dividend yield on it. And expense ratio is 0.59%. And you're mainly buying financial services. It's about 31% of the ETF. Not surprising. A lot of the country ETFs are made up of a lot of the big banks. Consumer cyclicals are 15, communications is 12.8, energy is 16.1, and industrials 10.7. And then I took a look at to see if I could maybe buy any of the holdings, but I could not, not in the US. But the biggest holding is Hellenic Telecommunications, 12.8%. Alpha Bank is number 2 at 9.8, and then Eurobank at 8.6. So that's the only pure play way to get into Greece, but it's doing pretty well this year for those who did get in. But there's always, I feel like, the tourism type of companies you could buy to try to snag some of at least what's going on with the tourism market. And some of those would be like Royal Caribbean, the cruise line, RCL is the ticker there. Booking, I'm always looking on Booking for my possible, hotels and all that. They have plenty in Greece, and that's BKNG. And I also own Booking in my own portfolio. You could do Expedia too. That is a Zacks 5 right now, but that's the strong sell. But the ticker for Expedia is EXPE. And then some of the airlines, American Airlines last year added a nonstop from Chicago into Athens. And given Athens' renewed popularity, I feel like more of the airlines may be adding some nonstop flights if they can do it. It's a pretty long haul from the East Coast of the U.S. So American Airlines, ticker AAL. United Airlines flies nonstop, I think, from Newark at least. And that is UAL, if you're interested in that one. And then if you're planning a trip, TripAdvisor, I was just on there this morning. I was telling Harry before we started this podcast, I got kind of sucked in, and then I was looking at hotels in various Greek towns. And TripAdvisor having some of the same problems as Expedia because Google changed that algorithm. If you type in best Greek hotels, you don't necessarily get TripAdvisor right away, so that their revenue was hit. But TripAdvisor, ticker is TRIP. They're Zacks number 3 hold right now. And then if you really want to get sucked in, I feel like Greece is a star of Pinterest for sure, because I know suddenly I look up and it's been like an hour. So if you can't make it over there, you can live vicariously. Pinterest, maybe PINS is an option, or Instagram, which is owned by Facebook, FB. Do you run an Instagram account, Harry?
No, I don't have that.
Okay, well that's too bad because I would sign up just to like see all your Greek pictures. So what else? What should we be looking forward to in 2020 for Greece? Like
Well, I think the tourism
be
will
huge
expand.
again? Yeah.
And there are a lot of interest even in the local areas regarding renovation that's going on, basically to try to get rooms to let.
Okay.
And I think, the private, I mean, Greece has a lot of public sector
Yes.
holdings, right? And the new government is claiming that they are going to privatize a lot of it.
Yeah,
So,
where does that stand? Because I know we've talked in the past, I think, about some of the airports being privatized on some of the islands and
Yep.
what that could be.
yeah, the airports, the transportation systems, certainly, the electrical grid.
Okay.
There are already some companies out there that basically still go through the government companies to basically give you electricity. But that's all going to change, and I think those may be good investments because right now the rates that they charge are kept low because of the government, and they also part of certainly the electricity company. They load up a lot of the government taxes and so forth in that company. Now, the new private companies, I think they're not going to do that anymore. So I think that will allow them to basically charge a little bit more because it's not going to be on the same bill, right? It's going to look like they're getting a deal, which
Right.
they're not going to be. It's going to be basically the company's charging more. So
Yeah. Okay. Well, those are certainly some big
good
issues.
for investors, not
Yeah.
good for the local
Right.
population. But
Right. Right. Definitely something to watch for next year. And as always, I still haven't gone to Greece, even though I continue to be on Pinterest and TripAdvisor looking. And every time we talk about it, but I know some of our work colleagues here at Zacks have gone even in the last year. So maybe we're influencing someone out there to take the trip. And with record tourism, obviously,
it's
plenty of people are still finding their way over there, and I will do it. I will go soon so
uh,
that I can give my own perspective during these podcasts.
a lot of good, wonderful places to see.
I know. I say this every time too. I always get overwhelmed with the sheer number of choice. But now that Athens is kind of resurging, I could just do Athens and the surrounding areas.
Oh, there's a lot of
Plenty to
interest
see
there.
there,
Oh,
yeah.
absolutely. Yeah. And all of the archaeological sites are very
Yeah.
close to Athens.
Okay.
So it's within, maybe a couple of hours, you can kind of see everything that's there.
Okay. And you're going to let me know if you buy some real estate and you're like leasing it out so I could get a deal
Sure,
in there maybe.
you go. Yeah.
All right. So if you're interested in investing in Greece, which we talk about every year, it's just got that Greek ETF, GREK is the ticker. And then I mentioned a whole bunch of these kind of travel and social media type of sites. We talked about American Airlines, AAL, United Airlines is UAL. You can buy some of the European airlines too. Some of those are traded on the US exchanges if you're interested in those. I took a look to try to find some REITs, even somebody that was maybe owning some hotels over there, resorts, some other way to get in there, but I didn't find any. And that's mostly, isn't it, because they're mostly family owned over
It
there?
is, yeah. The
Okay.
majority of the accommodations are family owned, except now with the investments in
Right.
the
There's some more
B&Bs.
going
Right.
in and things, but yeah, which is, I think, a good thing. It's much more, local focused. But then you could take a cruise over there. Royal Caribbean, RCL is the ticker there. Booking, BKNG, and Expedia, EXPE have a lot of accommodations. TripAdvisor, if you want to plan the trip, TRIP. And then if you just want to dream like I do, you can go on Facebook's Instagram, which is FB, and Pinterest, PINS is that ticker. But until next year, that's all that's going on with Greece. But it's good to see some more positivity coming out with our Greek podcast. So if you want to listen to some of the old ones, I definitely recommend you checking those out if you just kind of want to see what has changed over the last couple of years. And this is a good opportunity to remind everybody that just because a country or even a stock or something is kind of in the down and outs, that could be a buying opportunity because you only have to go up from there, basically. So lots of opportunities sometimes when things are being overlooked, as Greece was only a couple of years ago. So be sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single one of our episodes, especially our future Greek episodes here on The Market Edge. You can get us on Apple Podcasts, of course, and you can also get us on Spotify, and we're on SoundCloud and a whole bunch of other different platforms, but be sure to get us somewhere, and I'll see you again next week with some more stocks.
This material is being provided for informational purposes only, and nothing herein constitutes investment, legal, accounting, or tax advice, or a recommendation to buy, sell, or hold a security. Do not act or rely upon the information and advice given in this podcast without seeking the services of competent and professional legal, tax, or accounting counsel. Publication and distribution of this podcast is not intended to create, and the information contained herein does not constitute an attorney-client relationship. No recommendation or advice is being given as to whether any investment or strategy is suitable for a particular investor. It should not be assumed that any investments in securities, companies, sectors, or markets identified and described were or will be profitable. All information is current as of the date herein and is subject to change without notice. Any views or opinions expressed may not reflect those of Zacks Investment Research as a whole.